Vocal extremes are impressive, but what's even more impressive is using those extremes not as a self-aggrandizing gimmick, but as a tool for expressivity. You see, the real magic of Mariah's vocal fireworks is not that she uses them, it's how she uses them. Because understanding her technique and her intent will reveal that the best vocal runs aren't the ones that implement the most extreme vocal technique. The best vocal runs are the ones that have the most substance and just add so much to her music, her songs, her lyrics, and her artistry. So we're just going to get started on it right away. So this is one of those ones where I think it's a good opportunity to point out, I'm never impressed when there's just a lot of notes in a short period of time. It doesn't do anything for me because that's never been hard for me to do that. It's just like, do you have good vowels? Do you have good technique? Is your singing efficient? You can move really fast then and it's not a big deal. But I'm more interested in the artistic, the musicianship behind it in this instance. And this is a good opportunity. This is segment 1. I'm more interested in contrasting this particular segment because think of what you said about taking like runs and comparing them to one another. The part where we talked about Beyonce with the emphasis on the articulation and the attack, she had a very similar kind of run. And I think that Beyonce did a better job in the articulation. That could be a physical limitation because with the nodules, it is literally harder to have vocal closure, right? So, and you know, Beyonce might just have also a larger, bigger instrument so she can get more sound out of it. But at the end of the day, you know, we're talking about what singers can do in their runs, right? It's kind of fun. Now we got segment 2. So there's going to be a lot of that because if we're going to talk about like things one artist can do versus the other, right? Then we kind of have to talk about whistles and how Mariah does the craziest runs and craziest vocal agility shit on whistles. It's nutty. It doesn't make any sense. It's super fun. And what you got to remember is that the vocal folds of the average like soubrette woman is about the size of a dime when they're put together. That's really tiny. So you're creating these tiny little whistles, like openings in your vocal folds. It's insanely precise. It's not easy. And to be able to do that and then just control the pitch is absolutely nuts. And to do it with a lot of mobility the way that she does. Interesting that she does the run differently. She adds nasality here, and that makes it easier to move around. And then she started doing this, I think, later, where she gets up close to the mic and uses the proximity effect. What the proximity effect does is it boosts the low end. So if your low notes are kind of vanishing and you don't want to disappear, you can get up close to the mic and it'll boost the lower frequencies. I have a low cutoff here, but even then you can kind of hear how the low frequencies boost a little bit. Segment 4. One of the things that Mariah prioritizes a lot when she does her runs is the line, is the elegance, is legato. And so unlike Beyonce, where Beyonce is actually trying to lean into the dynamic differences, oftentimes Mariah goes out of her way to avoid it, including pulling back the mic, which is obviously something, you know, that's something of course Beyonce has done. People do that. But look at how often, how much Mariah does it. Down, it's almost like she's playing a trump, nah, like, or is it nah? Like she's jiggling her head a little bit. Hard to see because of the resolution, but look at it again and look out for that. It's super cool. Like, this woman's got tricks. It's so cool. And these are things that as a classical musician, like you don't consider the microphone, right? To get it to that level where you're actually like almost tromboning this shit. Really cool. Segment 5. I want to be bored, like as an like intellectual conceptually, I want to be bored by whistles, but I'm not. At least not when Mariah does it, because I think there's a musical decision behind it, which makes it so rewarding. This is the thing, again, Mariah is so good at with her runs, is she takes you on a musical journey. Here we have the grit and in contrast, sandwiched between two whistles. Super cool use of technique to actually get to some place that's like artistic. I really enjoy it. To me, segment, whatever the next segment is. This is so good. Get out of here with that, man. Again, one of the things we covered before with Beyonce was that the articulations being of heavy emphasis. Mariah's doing that on whistles. What? Huh? Unbelievable. Super, super good. The other thing too is, again, what we talked about before is this little tiny opening. Just this little tiny one in the vocal folds. She's doing this to where the pitch is also remarkably accurate for such a difficult technique. When you add more emphasis, you're changing the vocal folds in terms of the thickness. So oftentimes you're getting like just a change in pitch that's really subtle and is corrected over time. But because she's being really percussive with it, we're going to see that some of the notes they're fine. Like they're just not like cent perfect. Cent being 1/100th of a half step. And she even corrects the high note as she goes into it. This is normal. This is like physics, right? Like to a certain degree, you can't expect perfection on it. But it's just, what was impressive to me is it's so clean that it's almost imperceptibly, like it's basically perfectly on pitch. Might as well be, but that's wild. And this is going to be the next segment here. Somewhere over the rainbow. What I love, and this is a good example, of even in these little moments, you can break up phrasing in terms of like, the parts. And so there are multiple parts to a phrase. Every single time Mariah starts a run, you can almost picture the end destination, which is good phrasing. And so listen to how elegant it is. Don't focus on how many notes there are in a row. No one cares. The articulation, it's elegant. It's elegant. That's my favorite one, because this is my favorite one because this is the one you can tell that there's an end destination to the phrase. It's so beautifully legato. Wonderful. And what's difficult about it is not the notes, it's these articulations. Fly, fly, fly. That growing at fly, right? It makes it much more difficult to go to the next note. Like a potter's vessel. And I can do that a bunch of different ways, but I have to get really specific about my articulations. I have to get really specific about it. How am I going to grow into these notes, right? Thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel, like a potter's vessel. Being very, very quiet in the beginning there is great because it's in contrast to the thou shalt dash them, right? And so you get all of these different options if you're going to be a musician about it. And I get so much out of listening to Mariah and Beyonce. Like, it actually makes me a little misty. That when you slow these down, you could go part by part and talk about what they're doing because they're so specific, because they're artists. They're crafting the phrase. They're so attentive to detail. It's miraculous. It's so good to watch. generally speaking, you're going to want like less of an extremely lowered larynx because you want the folds to be more pliable. So you're not going to be as loud when you're doing runs as you would be when you're like belting or when you're doing a really big high note, because your folds aren't going to be as thick as they are because they need to move. Your folds need to move very quickly, right? This is a great example of that. Get out of here, man. Come on. So that's a great example of like that is actually really fast. But she lightens up to achieve that, right? The first part of that is ooh, ooh, or whatever it is. And she does that 3 times, but she grows it each time. And they cut it off here in the video a little bit. Ooh, right? So she's phrasing the little chunks and putting it in the context of the bigger phrase. She's very, very, very specific. And that's why it's like, it's cool to have fast notes, but whatever. I'm not phrasing my scales. Mariah is. That's the difference, right? That's the difference, the love, the passion, the discipline, the attention to detail. Like, that's the gap. That's why I love listening to this stuff. It sets me straight. I can't think of another singer whose belt I would call beautiful, where it's like, oh, that puts me at ease. Just silky smooth, really nice. I get the impression, and it's hard to know when someone's on a mic, but I get the impression Mariah has like a lighter voice, but aesthetically it sounds really pretty. Look at the baby. You're like, what's going on? What's going on? Yeah, you don't know what's going on, and you're scared and confused, so I'm gonna let you down. That's my puppy. That's my baby. You're so cute. You're just the bestest. I love talking to y'all. I really hope, like, it would be so sick to just, like, bring on some of these recordings. You guys are so passionate. It's crazy. It's so good.